National Catholic Register. This is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
The killer robots have arrived. Yes, you heard that correctly. And the Catholic Church is standing firm. This week on Register Radio, Register staff writer Jonah McKeown looks at the question of whether autonomous weapons guided by AI have any place in warfare. And then, Register Managing Editor of Digital Assets Alyssa Murphy gives us a late summer news roundup with stories that you might have missed and that hopefully you're going to enjoy hearing about. Hello, I'm Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News and host of Register Radio. My co-host, Shannon Mullen, Editor-in-Chief of the National Catholic Register, is here with me in studio in D.C. How are you?
Very good, Matthew.
I find it hard to believe that we're almost at the end of summer.
I know. Don't say that. There's still plenty of time. We've got weeks still to go.
That's very fair. Well, according to news reporting just recently, 2 years ago, during a weapons test in Ukraine, several Russian soldiers were killed by an autonomous drone set by its operator to, quote, Terminator mode. The incident, which was confirmed or disclosed by a Ukrainian drone company CEO, is believed to have been the first completely autonomous kill in combat. With the proliferation of autonomous weapons systems and technology, concerns are obviously mounting that we are entering a new and terrifying era of warfare with autonomous killer robots. What does the Church have to say? Well, Register staff writer Jonah McKeown, who is our resident expert in all things AI and technology, joins us now. We're happy to have you back, but once again, a rather alarming topic, but just the very notion of killer robots is enough that it ought to catch our eye.
Yes, it's great to be back and great to discuss this with you.
Yeah, Jonah, so this is really another in a series of pieces that was, largely inspired by Pope Leo's encyclical on technology and Catholic social teaching and AI. And he addresses this issue in that document. What does he have to say about autonomous warfare?
That's right. Yeah, Pope Leo does address this explicitly in his encyclical Magnificat Humanitas, which obviously we encourage all of our readers to read in full. But in a section where the Pope addresses the use of AI in warfare, he, expresses very, very strongly skepticism of the use of AI in warfare. He specifically criticizes the idea that AI could make war more feasible or make it more efficient, perhaps. And then he also very strongly reiterates the Church's position, which is not new, by the way. The Vatican has been speaking out against autonomous weapons or so-called killer robots for quite a while now, significantly longer than they've actually existed. But the Pope really reiterates the position of the Church, which is that for a conflict to be just, and obviously just war is an extremely important criteria for any Catholic engaged in warfare. But for a war to be just, decisions of life and death cannot be delegated to robots. And this, to many Catholics, that would probably seem to be a fairly obvious point. But unfortunately, as we've seen in the world we live in and the geopolitical environment, many of the world superpowers and others are racing to develop these killer robots that can select targets and kill people without any human intervention. And so this is something that should give all of us pause, to use an understatement.
Yeah, and Pope Leo chose as his theme for World Day of Peace the idea of AI and war. So one question that is often raised is this idea of the just war theory. There are laws that you have to follow about going into war, ius ad bellum, but then we also have very clear guidance on how a war is conducted, ius in bello. So would the AI question here emerge then in the conduct of war? But is there also that risk of surrendering ourselves in allowing AI to decide whether we go to war to begin with?
Right. I think that's a legitimate question. And, people I spoke to for the piece talked about the fact that AI can possibly be used in some some warfare contexts that do not involve killing, for example, intelligence purposes. So yeah, to your question, I could imagine a situation where an AI that is gathering intelligence for a country that is then used as a reason to go to war. It could be that could be incorrect. It could be incorrectly interpreted, because it runs the risk. Using AI in any warfare setting, including intelligence, does run the risk of what we've heard about AI from the beginning, that it can get things wrong, it can hallucinate, all these kinds of things, and it affects our human judgment, because people who tend to use AI a lot tend to kind of weaken their own judgment, and that has been demonstrated many times. So yes, to your question, AI can affect the conduct of war as you were in it, but also, yeah, I do think it's possible that it could affect going to war in the first place.
Jonah, one of the storylines that we're going to be watching is to see if there is any concrete reactions or responses to Pope Leo's call to action on some of these issues. It's still probably premature to make a judgment there, but I think the early indicators are it's full speed ahead, and that there is no real signs of a pumping of the brakes, and that applies to some of these warfare issues. But your story makes the point that, correct me if I'm wrong, currently the United States' position is that there has to be some human oversight. Can you explain what the policy is right now?
Yes, that is correct. So the Department of Defense does have a directive in force that mandates that any autonomous or semi-autonomous weapon has to maintain, quote, appropriate levels of human judgment over it. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't define what those appropriate levels are. So that's one issue. Secondly, there are a lot of calls in the military community among experts and those who are involved in the military community. There are many calls to change this and allow for the use of autonomous weapons, and the argument typically goes that, well, China and Russia are doing it, so we should do it to keep up with them. But there are some positive developments going on. There's a bipartisan bill in Congress that would codify this directive into law and strengthen it, which is a good thing. And in addition to that, one of the people that I quote in my piece, Professor Charles Camosi, he testified before Congress recently in support of the Church's view and of Pope Leo's view of autonomous weapons. And so certainly the Pope's voice is being heard at the highest levels of the U.S. government. But as you say, it remains to be seen whether it will actually be heeded. And we should all pray that it is heeded.
Yeah, you note this idea of passing specific protections under law. Now, there was a lot of discussion about this idea of updating or rethinking the just war theory, that the idea is somehow that the just war theory is antiquated. Is it possible that part of this idea, not necessarily of rethinking, but of reapplying just war from the standpoint of Catholic moral teaching and Catholic social teaching fits this situation almost perfectly?
Rethinking just war in the sense that the criteria
how we go about
nowadays,
right, of adapting just war under these new circumstances, not changing just war or the various criteria, but applying them in a way that everyone can understand why they still matter. In other words, the dignity of the human person in light of this new technology within sort of the wider construct of just war.
Yes, absolutely. And this is something the Church has had to do for decades. I mean, certainly, many decades ago when aerial warfare, the dropping of bombs from planes became a major feature of warfare, that was a situation that necessitated kind of a different application of just war theory from the Church. And certainly since then, popes have mainly called for an end to war in general. Not necessarily endorsing any kind of conflict. And so, yes, this new situation with AI, coming onto the battlefield, it will continue to be debated how this will affect the church's application of just war theory, which always it's always vital that for a conflict to be just, it has to be a last resort for a legitimate defense. And so, there's going to be a lot of debate going forward, and the pace of the AI weapons coming online and being used in warfare will only intensify that debate, I'm sure.
Jonah, about those weapons, so killer robots evokes all sorts of nightmarish images. But what are we really talking about there? Are we talking about drones? Are we talking about sort of humanoid-looking robots, soldiers? What is the state of this weaponry right now?
Well, again, we should pray that the humanoid robots never actually come here. But arguably more terrifying, yes, are these these little drones that can fly over the battlefield. I kind of describe in the piece it's searching for its target using sensors, and crucially, the AI is kind of given the leeway to find what it considers an enemy. Like maybe it's been given images of enemy tanks, and so it can search for those tanks on its own, and it has a gun, it has a weapon, and it can destroy them if it quote unquote decides that is the appropriate thing to do. And again, this from a Catholic perspective, even just from an ethical perspective, this is just not okay. Humans should be the ones to pull the trigger. And so when we're talking about what do these autonomous weapons look like, there's also other variants. I mean, the military is testing autonomous boats, autonomous vehicles, and these are the kinds of things that may not be armed, but can act as kind of sentinels and that kind of thing, and that could be more acceptable under a Catholic view. But again, we pray that the Terminator-style humanoids don't come to fruition. But sadly, they could. China is developing this kind of technology, and again, we should pray they never deploy it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is going to be developing even faster and in ways none of us can even imagine at this point. So something, obviously, that we're going to have to keep a very close eye on from a Catholic standpoint.
Yes, and it's great that the Pope and other Catholics have this on their radar and are continuing to speak out about it.
And it's great that we have you to be able to report on it. So, Jonah, thank you for that.
Thank you. It's always great to be on.
Well, Jonah McKeown, his piece, Killer Robots, you can find at ncregister.com. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Shannon and I will talk with Alyssa Murphy about stories you might have missed over the summer. Stay tuned to Register Radio here on EWTN Radio.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
And welcome back. I'm Matthew Bunson here with Shannon Mullen, Editor-in-Chief for the National Catholic Register. Well, it's been a busy and fairly warm summer, and while we're all having fun traveling or doing barbecues or going to baseball games, it's possible that you might have missed some fun, enjoyable, and sometimes important stories. And to catch us up on what you might have missed, and just so we can talk about some of these great stories, is Register Managing Editor of Digital Assets, Alyssa Murphy. Alyssa, welcome back to Register Radio.
Hey, Matthew, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, yeah. Well, so Shannon and I both have lists of our favorite stories that you've been covering, but I feel a mild obligation to start with the most obvious one, perhaps, and that is the White Sox honoring Pope Leo XIV with Pope Night, if for no other reason than what I'm referring to as the Pope hat, since I think we want to try to stay away from calling it a mitre.
Yes, so you did mention some of those baseball games some people might be going through this summer. There was a humongous night this week in Chicago. Of course, Pope Leo, we know, is a a devout White Sox fan. So
I saw what you did there.
It's actually been in the works now for almost about a year, ever since he was elected, really. Mike Downey was recently on EWTN News Nightly telling everyone that they've actually been working on this for quite some time because, as we know, the MLB has a reputation for being a little bit offensive in the past, sacrilegious, we might say. So Mike Downey was really trying to work on a great night to honor the Chicagoan Pope as well as the White Sox. And that happened this past week against the game against the Cincinnati Reds. It was Pope night, and they did have a Pope hat made, all decked out in the White Sox logo as well as the colors. And interestingly enough, Mike Downey said he did start a relationship with a Southside Chicago priest, Father Tom Hurley. They've actually been in collaboration for about a year, as I mentioned, working on this. He was there in the stands also, and they were able to do a sign of peace with all those in attendance. And, of course, we have these viral videos still circulating online this week, just showcasing everyone going to their neighbor and shaking their hand or doing a high five to really mark the occasion. And those hats were first only 10,000 were to be made, but because of popular demand, about 40,000 hats were taken home by fans just this week, Matthew.
So great. I mean, it was the shots of it. It just looked like an epic moment, and for White Sox fans, I don't know what the Pope's reaction was, but I gotta believe he was into it, Alyssa, watching that. So, such a cool moment.
I think so, and I wonder if he's going to request one of those hats himself.
Something tells me one of those is going to end up at one of his general audiences as a gift to him.
Yeah.
It was funny. Father Hurley thought maybe the Pope would have seen a few more home runs that night, but I think he definitely would get a kick out of seeing some of these videos that are still circulating.
Yeah, Alyssa, the Register print edition in recent months has undergone really an upgrade, a refreshing, and one of the features that's been so popular with our readers has been page 2. This is you're owning this real estate. This is all your work, and it's a lot of shorter, trending pieces, and so I just wanted to make sure that our people who are reading you online are aware that this is also a great feature of our print issue. But some of the things you've talked about recently, one of them was the Dominican Hillbilly Thomas. What are they up to?
So I think most listeners probably remember the Hillbilly Thomas, their first album that came out now about 4 years ago. Actually climbed to the top of the Billboard chart. They were literally number one under Bluegrass Billboard for the Billboard chart, topping it for, I think it went on for a few months. That's how popular they were. Father Thomas Joseph White has been part of that band since the beginning. Of course, he's at the Angelicum now. But we were able to catch up with them in a van, traveling down the road from Macon, Georgia, all the way to Birmingham, Alabama, actually right where our EWTN studios are. They had a big night there at the Lyric, and this is their brand new album, Strangeland, that everyone is already in love with. It's already available on Spotify. And what's very unique about this album is all of the other work they've done, they actually did all of their own engineering. These Dominican friars not only have such a great love for our Lord and St. Dominic, but they also have just a virtuosity when it comes to music, especially Americana and folk music, and also their production skills. Because that first album they produced themselves and it literally went to the top of the Billboard charts. This time around, they did hire an outside producer, which Father Justin Bolger was telling me did really just help in terms of the collaboration process, because you do have some of the priests that are writing the lyrics and then some that are the process of putting that to music. One of the priests said it's really an act of the Holy Spirit. But some of this music is just such heartwarming, beautiful ballads that are great for the whole family. I know it's a big hit with Catholic mothers. A lot of these albums might be heard as we're approaching school here in a couple weeks with carpooling. A lot of the mothers love them, and they're on tour right now. And it was also interesting to note that they have such a fandom that some of the concert goers are actually making their own shirts. So it's become quite a sensation. So if you do see the Hillbilly Thomas coming to a town near you, you should definitely check them out. They also have a great relationship with the Thomistic Institute, which a lot of the chapters are across the nation and worldwide. So sometimes they'll be on college campuses, but really just amazing music, and really the heart of their vocation comes out in it. They're just such beautiful lyrics, and the music. Matthew, I don't know if you've seen any of their shows and concerts, but they are just really, really a beautiful opportunity.
Well, I'm very biased because several members of the Hillbilly Thomists are friends of mine. So, I'm a friend and a groupie at the same time. Oh, I have to ask both of you, Shannon and Alyssa, about another piece that I know we want to get to, and that the title of it is "Relax, It's an iPhone: The Ad Big Tech Got Wrong," because I know you collaborated on this.
Yes, yeah, that was fun. This happened about 4 blocks from here, where I was driving into the city here in D.C., and at the corner of First Street and North Capitol, I saw this massive billboard, and I did a double take because it's a picture of a baby, an infant, in a car seat with an iPhone, all decked out in like fun, kid stuff, and the text was "Relax, it's an iPhone." And so I immediately alerted Alyssa what's going on here. Alyssa, what's the sort of tone deaf element of this ad? Give us some context for what iPhone was, or what Apple was really trying to accomplish here.
It's so strange, Shannon, when you sent me that image and you were talking about it. It was just such just an unbelievable moment when we consider the fact of what we know, what technology has done to young minds, especially toddlers and infants. iPhone came out with this idea, of an iPhone in a dog's mouth, an iPhone falling into water, trying to kind of showcase the durability and the ruggedness of these devices. And one of the ideas was, of course, an infant, a literal infant, picking up your phone and what could happen to your phone. But given the fact that we have these studies that showcase just recently brain development, literal brain scans showing impact from children staring at devices, how detrimental it can be, not only on a developmental level, but then also when we're getting into these schools that now are showing really lower test scores, inability to read because a lot of people are tending to be more on devices. It was really a severe tone-deaf situation. We had Mary Hassan really remark on this, and she's been quite an outspoken critic of technology within schools. And also Ashley McGuire just saying it's completely jarring. And it completely really does miss the mark for what many Catholics are concerned about with technology, not only from a developmental standpoint, but the gateway that it does become with social media and with pornography and even YouTube. None of this is really policed. We know that, and it's really just shocking that iPhone wouldn't have considered the reaction that this ad would have.
Yeah, well, Alyssa, we have 1 minute left, so we have to ask you very briefly, what is your favorite story for this summer?
There's been so many. I mean, I think that's the most beautiful thing about the Catholicism is really we can look at anything through a Catholic lens, but this beautiful story, this video of a mother dolphin holding up her dead calf for days on end, just because she didn't want to let her baby go, has really moved the hearts of so many. And it's gotten to the point where the mother's health is actually in jeopardy because she doesn't want to let her baby go. And it's this instinctual bond that so many millions are seeing on social media and on the internet that I think is just a beautiful way for people to realize how important motherhood is, and especially when you look at laws that were just passed this week in Massachusetts, how important it is to showcase the beautiful bond between a mother and a child.
Yeah, perfect pick. Well, Alyssa Murphy, thank you for all that you do, and I know people are really loving your pieces.
Well, thank you so much. God bless you.
Well, that's it for Register Radio for this week. Remember, for more news, analysis, and commentary, check out the National Catholic Register online at ncregister.com. Until next week, on behalf of our producer, Michael McCall, and Shannon Mullen, I'm Matthew Bunson. God bless.